people have arrived, so we'll make a start. So welcome everyone to this webinar this morning. I've been really looking forward to this one. The topic is Shakespeare's First Folio, and particularly the really exciting First Folio for children. I'm Sarah Mears, I'm from Libraries Connected, and I'm here today with Emma Daniel, also from Libraries Connected, who's managing all the tech for us, so thanks to Emma. It's really lovely to see so many of you here this morning, and I should just say we are recording today's webinar, so anyone who isn't able to join us will be able to share the recording with them later. But also, if you want to keep your cameras off or on, that's perfectly fine. Either way is lovely. Although it is always nice to see a few faces on the screen when you're talking, just to know that someone's there. Please do put any comments or questions in the chat. There will be space for a question and answer session at the end of the meeting. So because also if you yourself as well, that'd be great. So that'd be lovely. Thank you. And then, we really want you to be thinking as you're hearing today's presentations about ideas that you might have for both celebrating the First Folio, but also Shakespeare Week. We'll be talking about that today as well. So do any ideas, any things you've done before that you thought worked really well, do share them in the chat as we go through today's session. But it's and if you can just also keep yourself on mute whilst the presenters are speaking, that'd be really helpful. But it's my great pleasure today to introduce my colleague from the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust, Andy Reeves. Andy and I have been working together over this last few months, really, probably from the start of the year. He's Head of Learning and Development at Shakespeare Birthplace Trust, and he's going to just give us an introduction to the First Folio project. And then we'll be hearing from library colleagues a bit later on about their involvement in it as well. So over to you, Andy.
Thanks very much, Sarah, and thank you so much for hosting us today, and brilliant to see so many colleagues from libraries from around the country. So I'm Head of Learning Development at the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust, or SBT. I've got a few slides to share with you as we sort of introduce a really interesting project. A children's folio, which I'll go on to tell you a little bit more about. Many of you will have worked with the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust before, I think through Shakespeare Week, but if you don't know us, we are an independent charity. People know us for the buildings, I think, that we care for: Anne Hathaway's Cottage, Shakespeare's Birthplace, and many others. But as well as that, we have a learning program of national reach and some really well embedded relationships with library settings around the country, and some projects of size and scale, really, which I will touch on this morning. One thing to say is that we're not the RSC. It's something about acronyms, I think. SBT, RSC. Sometimes people do confuse us. Shakespeare, Stratford. We're not all about rehearsal rooms and performances, which is what RSC are about. We have a slightly different reach and work quite happily with them most of the time, but we're not them. So just to make that really clear. Okay, so let's look at the next slide. And this particular project we're going to talk about emerges from the learning team at the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust, and it's part of a lifelong offer that we make. So we have offers from early years and foundation stage through primary, secondary, sixth form, lots of university work, lots of work with international universities that come to us. In that picture you can see some students from Hawaii that came and doing some work in our properties, all the way through to lifelong senior learners. So our aim is not just to have a sort of museum offer or a good day out at the houses. That's definitely a big part of it, but we offer a learning program that has something for everyone, of no matter what age. Let's just give a little bit of context of this particular project. So if we look at the next slide, what we're talking about today is a project that is launching and will be with you next year, a version of Shakespeare's First Folio. Shakespeare's First Folio, the original Shakespeare Folio, this year marks the 400th anniversary of its publication. So it was published in 1623, just a few years after Shakespeare's death. And the folio was the first collection of Shakespeare's work. So apologies to anyone that knows all this stuff backwards, but we're just giving it a little bit of context. The folio being the first collected works of folio, it can be seen as an act of friendship because it was compiled by two actor friends of Shakespeare's, Hemmings and Condell. And without it, we would not have some very famous titles, including Macbeth, The Tempest, Measure for Measure, and some others. So the folio, the original folio, collected together nearly all of Shakespeare's plays. Of the known titles these days, Pericles is the most famous that isn't in there. And there are 3 or 4 others where it's about questions of attribution. Shakespeare actually collaborated on more titles than perhaps was originally thought at one time. So some of the collaborations didn't make it. And we also think there are 2 lost plays of which there is no current record. But essentially, not long after Shakespeare's time, the first folio came together. Of course, it wasn't known as the first folio because it didn't become the first folio until there was a second folio. So originally it was just the folio, collective folio of Shakespeare's plays. And the folio actually refers to the size of the actual document itself. So some of the plays exist in what are called quartos, more like perhaps pamphlet form, we might say. But this was an event in itself, bringing together plays in book form in really relatively early days of printing and book production. So about 750 copies were printed, we think, and 235 are known to be in existence. At SBT, we have care of 3 of them, and usually one is on display somewhere or other with us. So that was the original folio, not long after Shakespeare's death, bringing the plays together. If we look at our next slide, our project is about a children-specific version of the first folio that follows the same order as the original folio, has all the titles that are in that folio. It's going to be a lavish book, hardback, large. All of the texts have been edited by Dr. Angela Chowan, formerly of SBT, but now works for Warwickshire Libraries. So that's a great sort of synchronicity there. And lavishly illustrated by Emily Sutton. There'll be a dedicatory verse by Michael Rosen. The original folio features dedicatory verses by different people. So we've replicated that. Michael Rosen has written a short piece that goes into it. And it will be published, as I say, as a large-scale, lavishly illustrated book. So what actually is inside is edited, shortened versions of each of the texts, but crucially, keeping Shakespeare's original language. There are many, you will have seen them. There are many tales from Shakespeare prose retellings, but not so many actually using Shakespeare's original language, but in shortened forms, with illustrations, with the addition of more stage directions and things, but really shortened versions. So accessible, designed for young people, but nothing is dumbed down, essentially. So using Shakespeare's original language. We look at the next slide. There's also some more examples of the illustrations by Emily Sutton. So the reason for doing this is that we really want to ensure sort of 2 main things. One is to celebrate the quality of the book, and in a world where I hardly need to tell people on this call, young people and book and reading and book ownership, it's sort of challenged generally. So we want to find ways of making this book available to as many people as possible, but also to present versions of the plays that can be brought off the page. So we want to encourage performance, we want to encourage reading, and we want to, in line with the goals of Shakespeare Week, which my colleague Sally is going to tell you a bit about, but has a real goal for getting Shakespeare away from just sitting in rows in schools, listening to it being kind of read unconfidently. So we're hoping to inspire all kinds of off-the-page reactions from this. We're going to distribute roughly 10,000 copies absolutely for free. And 3,500 of those will go to libraries across the country. and 6,000 to schools, and then the other 500 will be for sort of targeted use. So we're going to deliver these literally to your door and to the door of schools for no charge. Because the book, as I've said, is a one large big hardback artifact, to make it more user friendly, we'll be putting a series of resources together around it. We've got some schools specific ones that we're pulling together, and we're asking schools to register to get their free copy and access to those resources. But we're also, for libraries, have a library specific resource that's being put together, and we've got colleagues who are going to talk a little bit more about that on the call today. So essentially there will be help to use the book, so it's not just an artifact that sits on display or on the shelf, but there's kind of digital resources to help use it and to help meet that goal of bringing work off the page. And what we would really love is, once you get the book, and once the resources are circulated, and once stuff starts to happen, is that you share your activities and ideas and stuff back with us, and we will celebrate as much as we can through the SBT website and central channels. We're distributing over 3,000 of them. We're not going to be follow up every single copy, it's clear, but as much as we can. So any larger scale ideas, we want to hear about what you're going to do with it. I'll try and answer a couple of questions as they come through, and if not, some of those up at the end. But if we look at the next slide, just a couple of procedural things. So this is going to land with you in April 24, so just after Shakespeare Week, which is in March next year. 3,500 copies on the way, as we've said. The way that will work is that we will deliver the right number of units to your stock units, essentially. So you should get the book through the sort of delivery mechanisms that work locally. So every branch should get one copy. There will be other copies which will be on sale commercially. At the minute, it's kind of one copy per branch we can kind of promise. If there are any additional copies that are available for free, that will emerge as we kind of get a little bit clearer on our delivery routes. But I think at the minute we have to just kind of safely say that there's kind of one copy for everyone, but the resources that we can put together digitally can be shared kind of a lot wider. So if we actually do need more copies, you can buy them. We'll see if there's deals that can be got. It's a little bit early for me to have clarity on that yet. And what's going to happen around it, we already know that there will be some performance projects for young people using both the background of Shakespeare Week and potentially across the summer. So we'll be doing some work in Stratford using the text, working with schools to model some high profile performance work. But other ideas will flow, and we really hope that this isn't just a nice artifact, but that it's used in different ways. That's basically my headline. In terms of some of the questions that we've got, let me have a little look. I think it's one copy per branch is what we're aiming for, essentially. Additional copies will be on sale, as we've said. The resource that Collie's going to talk about in a bit will have lots of ideas about how to use it. I think in terms of whether it's community-run libraries as well, I think I'm right in saying, Sarah, that we have enough through your kind of connections to include those. And
yeah,
it basically, our sort of partnership is with everything that's covered by Libraries Connected. So I think mobile libraries should be fine. I'm not quite sure about prison libraries. I'm not sure we've talked about that yet. That might be something we might have to investigate separately. but we will have a few kind of copies that are within our gift to do something with. So if there's an avenue that we've not thought of, it's always kind of worth talking about us, as long as it's not an extra thousands and thousands. But our goal is just to get it to as many people as possible. I would say, I mean, thinking about prisons, this is a children's folio, so it's really aimed ideally for schools. It crosses primary and secondary, so up between the ages of about 7 and 14 roughly, we think. Having said that, in family settings, library settings, I think that's yeah, the potentially there's some flex there, but that's kind of what we imagine the pitch will be. As I've said, the language is the original language and is edited, but the look of the book and the way the stage directions and stuff are put together kind of point it towards those younger audiences. The reason why it's coming out the week after Shakespeare Week is just simply Shakespeare Week is a massive project. This is a massive project. SBT is not a massive organization. And I think essentially to try and launch and deliver the book while delivering Shakespeare Week, it's just kind of runs the risk of colliding with each other. So although there will be work using the book, so we'll release some of the material with groups that we're working with beforehand, I think the actual launch of the book or delivery of the book themselves will follow quite close on. I mean, we really hope that the folio sparks stuff for a long time to come across the summer and into the future, you know, so it's not really about a headline one-shot deal and then it's gone. We hope that whatever you guys do with it, you'll share with us, and that whether that's the following autumn or the following year or whatever, we really want this to be out there and used, and it not just to be about that week or that month or whatever. But it's purely practically, I think, trying to do both exactly at the same time for a small organization is just a little bit tricky. Okay, there's some interesting things about the genesis of the book and how it relates to another of our teams at SBT in collections. So I think I'm gonna hand over to my colleagues to tell you a little bit more about some interesting things about how it was put together.
Thanks, Andy. Thank you. Hi, I'm Caroline, and I'm the Trust Librarian. I've been the librarian for about 6 months now. So yeah, it's been a rollercoaster ride of learning and enjoying exploring the collections. Yeah, Shakespeare's Birthplace Trust, as Andy's explained, there's a lot of people think about properties, but we are a museum, we are an archive, and we have a library. As the librarian, I'm responsible for roughly, not counted them individually, 70,000 books. And we also have periodicals that make up the library collections. The library collection is split into two. So we have modern, which for SBT is anything from 1847, which is sort of an arbitrary date, which was chosen because that's when the trust was established. And that's modern. And anything after 1847 goes into our early printed book collection. The largest collection is the modern collection. And early printed books is roughly about 2,000 books. And we also have a really big collection of pamphlets and ephemera, which I really love. It's a really enjoyable collection to explore. So, early printed book is made up of Shakespeare's own works. So, a little known book called the First Folio, which I think we've all heard of now. As Andy said, we've got 3 copies. So, essentially, we have 2 copies that are ours, and we look after the RSC's copy as well, because in the archive, we care for the RSC's archive. So even though we definitely aren't the RSC, we do look after their archive. And we also have in our collection fragments of other copies of the First Folio as well, because back in the day, people like to tear bits out. The early printed book collection it's a beautiful room to go into. Our stacks downstairs and see it, and it's pretty much every colleague's favourite room to go into. And it contains a number of volumes, which are versions of books which Shakespeare would have used and was influenced by for his works. So, for example, Ovid's Metamorphosis and Holinshed's Chronicles. And then we have a lot of works by his contemporaries in there, and we have a large amount, as Andy mentioned earlier, the quartos, so lots of different editions and versions of the quartos in our collection, and lots of work by his contemporaries as well. Few of my favourites in there are the books that don't actually focus on English literature, for example, but books like focus on gardening and botany, because the illustrations are incredible in them. Our modern book collection is divided into Shakespearean studies and local history, because we are also a record office as well. The Shakespeare section includes adaptations and translations of Shakespeare's plays, which are global. They come from all over the world, as well as critical and theoretical texts on Shakespeare and his works. The library and archive collections can be viewed in our reading room, which is based at the Shakespeare Centre, which is next to the Birthplace, and it's open Monday to Wednesday by appointment. We've just launched online booking, which we've all got very excited about. And our collections can also be searched via our catalogue. And to learn more about all things Shakespeare, on the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust website, there's Shakespedia, which answers everyone's different questions about all different bits of Shakespeare's life, people who influenced him, and it's a really good resource for people who are starting to learn about Shakespeare. It's really accessible one, so anyone across the ages can use it to start learning a bit more about who Shakespeare was. But as Andy said, our collections really help inspire the children's folio. And Amy, who was here at the time when everyone who was getting together, she was here. She's going to talk to you a bit more about the actual items that influenced it. Thanks, Amy.
Thanks, Caroline. Can we just go back one slide? Thank you. So, yep, I'm Amy. I'm collections manager here at the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust. So I have oversight of care and access to our museum, library and archive collection. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about the collections and the inspirations for the children's folio. So first of all, the collection is large and diverse. We've got from Anglo-Saxon jewellery to performance recordings of the RSC from last week. But the fulcrum to all our collections is Shakespeare. And we use our collections to tell lots of different narratives, principally Shakespeare's biography and the world he lived in. Also, the history of England as it was to Shakespeare, and then his huge cultural legacy right up to present day. But for this project, we were considering literacy, creative process, and the development of the book form itself. So, as Andy's touched on, books were a vital feature and a relatively new innovation of the Elizabethan age, and that melting pot of ideas, which created the environment, that fertile ground for the outpouring of literary works that are still hugely iconic today. Very neatly, the development of the printed book form is also what gives us Shakespeare and speaks to the way that the book form is a way to preserve and share information. So those were kind of our starting points. So we can go to my other slide. So obviously in the folio, children's folio is inspired by the First Folio, which Andy has described. And it's influenced by its form and its contents. But it wasn't just books that we used as part of the creative process. So I'm just going to touch on a few items here. So we have the inkwell, which speaks to the creative process and the movement from the handwritten manuscripts with the quill pen and then into the printed format. We also have medieval illuminated manuscripts, so that's the top center image, which speak to the development of the book form, so the influences pre-printing press and the way that the medieval manuscript form really sets the format, you know, as we see it today, with the titles and the illustrations and even the shape of the rectangular books. Some of these objects you can see, like the inkwell and the illuminated manuscript, are also just really decorative and playful, particularly the illuminated manuscript in its illustrations. And then the last one I'll mention is the embroidered cloth Bible. So that speaks to the way that book ownership and the way books were cherished and customized adds all these layers of understanding about books themselves. And, what that means in the current context today is interesting. But obviously each folio has its own story to tell, each First Folio. So yeah, I just wanted to give a really brief nod to some of the inspirations and the way that as an organization we kind of work together on these projects and really open up, like an open invite to contact us, because we are a charity and we are here to engage the world with Shakespeare and make our collections accessible. So if you follow the collections.shakespeare.org.uk link, that'll take you to our online catalogue for our museum, library and archive. And that you can also follow through there to our online exhibitions, our blogs, Shakespedia that Caroline mentioned. And we also our inquiries service. So I shall hand on to Sally now, I think.
Hello, everyone. I was wondering if we could have the first Shakespeare Week slide up. That would be great. Thank you. So hi, everyone. It's lovely to be back talking to libraries again. I'm sure there are lots of you here. I can't see all your faces. There's so many of you, but I'm sure many of us have our paths have crossed before, whether it was online or in person, for all the different kinds of Shakespeare training that we've had over the years. So many of you will have celebrated Shakespeare Week in libraries before, but I think it's always good to have a little look and see exactly what Shakespeare Week is about. But before I do that, if I can make the connection to the Children's Folio, because that's the main purpose of us being here today. But part of the process of establishing the Children's Folio came from some of the work that had been done in Shakespeare Week. We experimented with some snappy Shakespeare scripts where we had children performing some of Shakespeare's plays in shortened forms, and these, had a lot of success in schools, and schools have been downloading these resources over the years. So we could see that there was some sort of appetite for this kind of work. As you all know, Shakespeare Week is not just for those that are really far along in their Shakespeare journey. There might be teachers that have just come to Shakespeare for the first time and have no idea how they're going to bring that to children. And that's our job at Shakespeare Week, is to make those ways accessible, is to have something for everyone. If you want to just sort of dip your toe into Shakespeare to start with, and then as you gain confidence, you can come back to the website and access more and more of our resources. So whatever level you're at and whatever confidence level you have, we can support you with it. And that goes for libraries as well. Over the years, we've talked to librarians and asked, how can we help you celebrate Shakespeare with small children? What kind of resources and training can we support you in? Because our link with libraries is massively important to us. We love that Shakespeare is brought to children and families in communities across the country, and over the years that support from libraries has grown and grown, and we really value that partnership. So Shakespeare Week in a nutshell is the annual national celebration of Shakespeare for primary school children. It's organised and delivered by SPT, but it is in conjunction with a lot of partners, including libraries and cultural venues across the whole of the United Kingdom. And obviously our schools are a huge part of the way that it's celebrated. The activities are cross-curricular, they're creative. There are events and resources that are all based on Shakespeare's works, life and times, very closely aligned with our collections, and we work with the team, the experts in that department, to make sure that everything we deliver is authentic and can be trusted by teachers and libraries. It's celebrated online largely through the Shakespeare Week website, but also in person at schools, cultural venues and libraries. And we have hub regions across England due to some fantastic Arts Council funding that allows us to get in and really meet the schools that make this happen and support them in their journeys. Next year is a big year for us. We'll be celebrating our 10th anniversary. There'll be flash mobs and showcase events. In fact, I think I saw Becky somewhere, Becky Pritchard somewhere in these libraries. Oh, I can see you there, Becky. Becky's one of our hosts for these fabulous events. They are confidential at the moment, but you'll be seeing children popping up all over the place, including in two of our big libraries, Birmingham and Barnsley. There's going to be new resources, competitions, and a new book club. If I could go on to the next slide. There are lots of exciting opportunities coming up for libraries in Shakespeare Week 2024. As always, we will continue to put resources up on your particular page. It's shakespeareweek.org.uk/libraries. There's a bank of resources there already, but every year we add more detail and more events and resources there for you. There will be some new early years rhymes for rhyme time. We're working on those in collaboration with the Story Museum. And we will be running some fabulous librarian training sessions in puppet making and storytelling in partnership with Little Angel Theatre. I'll come on to that in a moment and give you a bit more information. And we're really excited to be launching, I like to think it might be the first in the world, a children's Shakespeare book club. And that will be launching in Shakespeare Week. And again, I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. As always, you'll have access to our new resources. We're working on some diary and journaling resources, something that's a really lovely activity for all ages. And I know some libraries are really getting on into that. It's a fantastic wellbeing tool apart from anything else. Obviously linked to Shakespeare in our case. There'll be new Will's Word Warrior activity booklets. Currently working with Professor David Crystal to create the content for those. And it will be along the lines of Shakespeare's Lines for Life. So lines and quotes from Shakespeare that you can use to kind of decide how to live your life. He's got a whole bank of them. It's absolutely fascinating. And we're going to be making that in a very child-friendly format. Those will be available as downloads for everyone to enjoy, although they are primarily aimed at children. They're fun for everyone. Of course, we still have our Lego model making, creative book making, library event kits, and so much more. If we just move on to the next slide, I'll tell you a little bit about the training that's coming up. Please hold the date. We've got Tuesday the 30th of January booked in, and there'll be an afternoon slot and a morning slot for you to sign up to. I think last year we managed to squeeze in 90 librarians. I will check the capacity. We might be able to have more if there are more of you that want to join, but there'll be more information about that. I'll send out in December and how to sign up for that. So we will provide free training sessions for up to 90 librarians. This training this year will include the following things. We're going to work on showing you demonstrations for making 4 simple types of puppet that can be made very easily and very cheaply in your setting. We'll be sharing storytelling techniques using puppetry to enable you to run an event, perhaps making puppets and then using them to tell stories with. And then in a deeper way, and perhaps with older children, we'll be looking at exploring the way puppets are absolutely fantastic tools for exploring moral conflicts. Again, of course, with a Shakespearean twist. The training will also look at how to use these activities so that it's really practical in your existing library activities. So we're not asking you to create something new and bespoke, but we'll be explaining how they can be used for rhyme times, for baby and toddler sensory and storytelling sessions, art and craft clubs, story time and read along sessions, drama clubs. Again, that could work really well with the Children's Folio. We can look at ways of linking those projects up together. And Little Angel Theatre have got some suggestions for some English tutoring sessions using puppets, which they will share with you. We'll also supply resources to use after the training, and they'll go into our libraries page on the website. With some advice on book building, drop-in or bookable workshops, engaging with reading challenges and other things that we hope will be of use. On to the next slide, I'll tell you a little bit more about the Children's Shakespeare Book Club. So this is a new initiative for Shakespeare Week 2024. It's a way for us to deepen our engagement in our hub regions. It will be a kind of termly setup. schools tell us that they really want some help with reading comprehension resources, that they're always looking for new ideas, new ways to explore books. And we'd love them to do that with Shakespeare books, of course. So we've partnered up with Walker Books, and we have a programme in place. We've got the first two books. We're working on the resources for those at the moment. And so that will be launched in Shakespeare Week. It will happen 3 times a year, once a term. We'll choose a children's Shakespeare book, and we'll provide a pack of resources. I can see a question coming in about what age group roughly. The book club will be aimed primarily at Key Stage 2. I think there'll be a guest appearance of a Key Stage 1 book at some point during the next year or so. But the first 2 books really are aimed at Key Stage 2. So each term we'll choose a children's Shakespeare book, and we'll provide a pack of resources, including book excerpts, reading comprehension activities, book review templates, and other ways that you can explore the book across the curriculum. There'll be a termly author or illustrator video that will go out live to our hub schools, but we will record, and then libraries can tap in and use that if that's of any use to them as well. The material is going to be kept on a dedicated area of the Shakespeare Week website, but it will also be housed on your special libraries page, so you'll be able to access it there. In terms of the puppet making workshops, somebody's asked what age group that will be aimed at. There will be something for all ages. We're aiming in the library session, we've got a 2-hour session, so we'll be looking at early years right through to Key Stage 2 for that session. Going back to the book club, it will be launched in Shakespeare Week with our patron, Marcia Williams' book, Mr. William Shakespeare's Plays. We'll celebrate Shakespeare Week with our patron's book. She'll make a lovely guest appearance for us, and children will be exploring Marcia Williams' wonderful world of illustration and accessible versions of Shakespeare. The second book club will be the Children's Folio in the summer term. So again, it will be another wonderful way for libraries to engage with this fabulous new book that will be coming to you. And in the summer term, there'll be a lovely exploration of that. We hope we will be able to persuade the illustrator to come and speak to the children, and we can record that for you as well. And there will be another suite of resources coming that you'll be able to have access to. So I think that moves me on to the final slide, which is just a little reminder of where you can find all these materials. I think Sarah said that this presentation will be available, it'll be recorded. So if you need a reminder of where to find things, you'll be able to find it on there. But it's fairly straightforward. They are available year-round, the resources, despite the name Shakespeare Week. You can visit the website. There'll be storytelling kits, arts and craft activities, rhyme time materials, puppet templates. There's so much there for you already. It's very easy to access. You can do it in 3 ways. You can visit the special dedicated page for libraries, shakespeareweek.org.uk/libraries. You can just go to the Shakespeare Week website and you can access the Kids Zone area of the website by just a simple click in the menu bar. That takes you to a whole load more free resources. But for even more resources, we would love you to sign up as an organisation. If you go to Shakespeare Week, to the website, you can click on register. It's very, very simple to register yourself as an organisation. So there are 3 ways to get the resources. And each of those ways has a different bank of resources in there. So by doing all 3, you'll get absolutely hundreds. So that's just a reminder of where you can get everything. And just leaves me to say thank you. Thank you for your ongoing support of Shakespeare Week. You know, it really matters to us that libraries are involved, and we're delighted to be continuing to support you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sally, and thanks to Andy and Amy and Caroline as well. It's been a great partnership this year, working with everyone at Shakespeare Birthplace Trust. And back in September, 8 library staff from across the country came together at an amazing house in Stratford-upon-Avon, Harvard House, and we did some work on ideas for libraries to use the First Folio. I've seen some questions about marketing and stuff, and we'll definitely be thinking about that and talk a bit more to Andy about that at the end. But we were starting to think about activity ideas that libraries could do around the First Folio. So I've got two of the colleagues who came to that day with us today. So we've got Rajan Sharma from Hillingdon Libraries and Katie Jeffs from Solihull Libraries. And I was just going to ask them a bit about their experience of the day, really, that day working together. But also why they wanted to be involved. We had some really brilliant applications, I should say. We opened up applications through the summer, and we were only able to take 8 people, so a lot of people weren't able to join us, but we're really grateful for those who we were able to select and who came today. And so perhaps I'll start with you, Katie. Could you tell us a bit about why you wanted to be involved?
Yeah, I mean, I'm basically a bit of a Shakespeare nerd. I love Shakespeare. I can't pinpoint exactly when it started. It's been going on for a while. But like Andy was saying, I'm keen on finding creative ways to engage young people with Shakespeare that isn't the sort of learned environment of sit at this desk, study this text, get bored out of your mind, and turned off Shakespeare for life. So when this came up, I was like, oh, that sounds really interesting, and I want to be involved in this. So.
Oh, thank you, Katie. And Rajan, what about you?
Yeah, so kind of in parallel to my libraries career, I'm involved in the creative arts as well. So as a writer and performer. So for me to kind of bring together my kind of library career, you know, helping early years story time, hosting play reading groups for adults, and to bring in the creative side as well, having performed Shakespeare, being inspired by Shakespeare and some of the things I've written. It was just a great way to bring those two things together to try and, you know, be part of this project to encourage and make accessible Shakespeare's works for young people.
And we're very privileged to have a look around the First Folio exhibition while we were there. Was there anything that really struck you from that exhibition?
Yeah, there was this. I'm not going to go for the obvious and go, oh, the First Folio. But next to the First Folio was this tiny little book, and in it, somebody had been to the original plays when they were when they were performed. They were in the audience, and they were writing down all of the lines that they liked. So they go, oh, write that down. And the pages are absolutely crammed with writing, and it's tiny writing as well. And this thing is just crammed full of the bits that somebody had thought were really good and worth recording. And it's just one of those little sort of bits of history that you don't normally get to see.
It was amazing. And Rajan, anything from you?
Yeah, for me, it was kind of discovering the genesis of the folio, really. That it was put together by his friends to try and create the best preservation of his work, as a gift and a legacy to you know, his contemporaries, but then also because of that we have it now today. So it was great to kind of understand more about that process and how it came together.
Yeah, it was very striking, wasn't it? So, well, actually, while you're there, thinking about that sort of friendship, we spent the afternoon in Harvard House working up some ideas for this, and obviously we haven't really sort of completed that yet, but we worked up particularly two of the ideas. Rod, would you like to talk about the idea that you were going to talk about, which is about the family folio idea? And then
yeah, I think when we were kind of running through ideas, when this one came up, it was just how simple an idea it was, which is for children to be able to create a family friendship folio. You know, materials are generally quite accessible: paper, thin card, put a few sheets together. How you bind it is kind of up to you as well, whether you staple, string. And then you're only kind of limited by how creative you want to be. So to create, a small book, either as a keepsake where you can record memories, add in photos, Shakespeare lines, whatever it might be, to keep it yourself, or to gift it to your friends and family. It could be family trees, portraits, handprints. Such a simple idea, but that idea of the folio being generated by Shakespeare's friends, to be able to do that in a very simple way, and you're only kind of like limited by the materials as to how elaborate you may want to go.
Yeah, I think that theme of friendship really struck all through the conversations that we had in that afternoon, didn't it? And how powerful that was, and how it continues today. It's not something that was just around Shakespeare. This is everyone's experience, or hopefully from family. So, Katie, could you talk about the other idea that we had that we've worked up?
Yeah, so it's called story sequencing, and it started out as mats that you can put on the floor, and then we sort of talked about it, and well, not all libraries have space to do stuff on the floor, or so then we sort of developed it into a sort of more tabletop version, and the idea is that you would create 4 cards from each play. So it started with and then and finally, and the children would sort of get the cards. They're all mixed up, and you would work with them, or the parents or whoever they're in the library with would work with them. As right, so which do you think is the first card? Okay, which one do you think comes next? Which one do you think comes next? And they put them in order. So very simple. Each card would have a bit of text on it to describe what happens in that particular bit, but also a picture. Now, we talked about having the picture from the relevant bit of the children's folio, but of course there's copyright issues potentially, so maybe not. But to having some form of image that even if you don't speak English, or English isn't your first language, you can still try and do it from the images without having the text, without having to read the text as well, if that makes sense. And then we said, well, that's fine, but once you've done it, you've done it, one shot thing. So then we started thinking, well, how can you use that moving forward? How can you use it in other ways? So we said, well, okay, you've got the sets, and each set is a play, so let's mix them up. And I know there's some people who have just gone, we're going to have to put them back in order again. But, so you mix them up and you do your own sort of Shakespeare mashup play. So you end up with bits of all the different plays. And then we said, well, okay, then use that as a springboard. So if you happen to have a drama provider on your workforce, you could run a workshop where the children pick a card and create their version of the scene, or pick a card and the children write their own story based on the picture. So start thinking about what the picture is saying rather than what the words are saying, and all sorts of activities that you could springboard off from a simple card set. Yeah.
And that felt like a very flexible idea. We were very much thinking, weren't we, about hard-pressed libraries where capacity, as ever, is an issue, but something that actually could be delivered just by families on their own if you wanted to, or you could make it as big or as small as you wanted to. So I think flexibility was key to that. Just thank you both of you for sharing those ideas, but and we're going to be working those up along with others for a kind of top 10 tips for you for next spring, but and also we'll be, I think, mining the wonderful resources of the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust, because they've got so much on the website as well. So we don't want to be reinventing wheels, but enhancing that. Can I just, for both Raj and Katie, what was it like for you working in that wonderful building on that day?
Well, I'm a bit jealous of the people that got to go upstairs and have a look around, because I'd actually hurt my knee on the day, so stairs were an issue. So I didn't go upstairs, but I think being in that building and having the history around us as well rather than being in like a boring white corporate room. You know, that in itself lends a bit of inspiration. And we did have fun with the tourists.
Yes.
Windows. We had a bit of fun with them.
Yeah, just to echo that as well. I mean, to be in kind of like a Tudor type property, to put yourself in Shakespeare's seat, to be working with colleagues to come up with creative ideas. Yeah, it was just a fun creative day.
Well, thank you. And thanks, Katie and Raj, for coming today and sharing that. I'm going to hand back over to Andy in a minute. Andy, I just wondered if you could just quickly tell us about Harvard House, because it's probably not one that everyone knows, but it's got connections with the library service, because there is a John Harvard Library in the London Borough of Southwark. So yeah, I wonder if you could just tell us very quickly about that, and then we can answer any questions that are unanswered in the chat.
Sure. So Harvard House is one of the properties that we look after. It's right in the middle of Stratford. It's right next door to the pub. It's a very old Tudor building. It's currently not open to the public, but we use it for learning sessions. It's quite small, but really interesting to explore upstairs. And it wasn't in the Shakespeare family, but it's definitely contemporaneous with Shakespeare, so he would have known the building. And the Harvard family who owned it are the same Harvard family who that eventually then will link to the founder of the university in America, and we think the same link into the library. So the famous name of Harvard is essentially the same one. So it's one of the properties that we have. So it's not, wasn't directly owned by the Shakespeare family, but the building would have been there in his time.
Thanks, Andy. So we've got a few questions just that I'm not sure we've answered yet. So we'll just work through those if that's okay. And the first one is about, will we be sharing a marketing and comms pack as well? Will there be any joined up promotions of the events that libraries will be delivering?
I think it's really interesting. I think it would be really good to know what would be useful from library's point of view. What would you like to see in kind of like a marketing pack? So we can definitely help with some assets. And we have a marketing department. They're very small and perfectly formed and very kind of overwhelmed with work. And we've talked about some massive national projects, but they're definitely working with us on this. So whether that's sort of producing resources centrally for you to use, the templates and stuff like that, I think it would be really good, perhaps through the mechanism that we already have through Sarah, to hear what would be helpful to you. So I think definitely yes, but it's much better if you can tell us what's useful for you, and then we can see what we can do. We've talked about sort of rights for images and stuff like that. There is some nuancing around, but we can't advertise this without using those images. So we'll have to sort of check whether like a complete set of the characters can be released or stuff like that. But there will be that kind of stuff. It all goes into legalese with the illustrator and publisher, of course. So knowing what would be helpful for you probably it will help us get the offer right.
Yeah, and Naomi says, our performing arts library is included in the distribution list. I'm sure we come with a list of libraries in Somerset. If your library was on that Arts Council list, the list that's currently on the Arts Council listing, we would have included it in the numbers, Naomi. If not, then you might be able to do some negotiation with libraries in your authority, because actually, having one in a performing arts library would be probably brilliant, as long as everyone can access it. So yeah, we can look at that. Sorry, Andy.
Yeah, no, sorry. I was just going to I was going to say something and then it went out of my head, actually. Sorry.
And then our black, that sounds amazing. Don't quite know how to start thinking about that. And she asked about the children, what age group roughly? And we said sort of key stage 2 mainly, didn't we? Key stage 2, key stage 3-ish.
Yeah, I think there's some confusion around the shapes. I think the question came in during Shakespeare Week. So some of Sally's specific things were key stage 2. I think the book itself is sort of aimed at roughly age 7 to about age 13, 14. And the point I was going to make was about the website. So Sally talked about the Shakespeare Week website. There will be information about the Children's Folio through that website, but also through the main SBT website. At the minute, there's a registration link which is just aimed at schools. Libraries don't need to register. We will send you the stuff. But if you're at all unsure, some of these specifics about the type of library you are, just drop me an email, and if it's not thousands of copies, I'm sure we can include you. And so the other thing to say, there will be a lot more information about the folio and about the joining up bits and about letting everyone know what's going on with it through our website and through our channels as time goes on. As I say, the book would launch in April. We don't have a April the 2nd or 7th or whatever precisely yet, because basically the print run, it's still to be exactly decided, but it will be just after Shakespeare Week. But rest assured, as soon as we have that definite date, and that's about how we put the distribution network together as well. So it probably won't all land on the same day in the same places, but we will be publicizing that and letting you know to help plan. But April is as kind of accurate as I can get you at the minute, I'm afraid.
We can certainly communicate once we've got a bit more detail. We'll be sending around communications. And there's a couple about the Shakespeare Week activities, Sally. First of all, it was how much will it cost to join and run the book club? And the other one was, are you engaging any celebrities to help with engagement? I think those were both about Shakespeare Week.
Yeah, but I think, sorry, Sally, you answered that one, because there's two answers to that, isn't there?
Well, the Shakespeare Children's Shakespeare Book Club there will be no charge for that. Obviously, it will. The way that we'll create the resources is that there will be excerpts of the books that we're talking about within that resources pack, but we would imagine that these are books that you would have in your library already, the Marcia Williams books, for example, and we know that you're going to have the children's folio in your library as well, but no, there is no charge for that at all. And Sarah and I, we've already said that we'll have a little conversation about this. It could be a lovely partnership with schools, in that perhaps we can get copies of the books in for schools to run their reading clubs through the libraries. But that's a conversation that we are hoping to have in the future. And so what was the other question, Sarah?
The other one was about celebrities to support the sort of engagement. You've got celebrities to support engagement. Yeah.
Well, for Shakespeare Week, we do work with a few celebrities. We have mainly children's authors and illustrators that support our work, which is fabulous. We have Ben Kaji, the CBeebies presenter, which children really, they really recognise him. They're very excited to meet him when he comes in person. But there will be a video with him. And for next year, we have Michael Rosen doing a lovely online broadcast for us, which again will be available for you to see. That's called Showing Off with Shakespeare, and as you can imagine, in Michael Rosen's style, he's going to have a lot of fun with Shakespeare's language and show off big time.
Yeah, brilliant.
And we will have another Horrible Histories broadcast as well, where we have Martin Brown, the illustrator, doing some fabulous things. He's got a very fun Shakespeare and Stratford quiz that he'll be putting out there with lovely gruesome answers that will get children chuckling.
Sounds fabulous.
And just on that, for the wider Children's Folio project, there will be some sort of famous names doing little film pieces that we can point you to, or that will come out. So I can't name them yet, but yes, there will be some sort of top level kind of advocacy for this.
Tom's asked about, just to confirm, that will they be sent to a central location? They will be. I know it's different. I know that some libraries have direct delivery, but the cost of doing that for our organisations would be a bit too much. So we will have to send them to one library within an authority for onward distribution. So I know not all libraries do that. So there were just a couple. Oh, was it Naomi who was asking about, could they be PNG or JPEG files for any logos or anything, just so that it's more flexible for putting onto branding and so on? That would be really helpful.
Yeah, definitely.
And Olivia saying it could coincide nicely with her birthday, so that would be good. That would be excellent. Yeah.
Or Shakespeare's birthday, possibly.
Yeah. You have a link with the Arts Council. I think that's probably all the questions. Sorry if I'm just scrolling down quickly and Where, oh, Sally, where will the workshop be held? Will it be in Stratford? That's one for Sally.
Oh, the training sessions are going to be online, so
Right.
that means that we can access that everybody can access them.
We'll have to think about how we sort of publicize the distribution list to make sure that everyone knows how and where to expect them. But that's a good point. But we will share that information with you a little bit nearer the time.
Yeah, and we'll also as much as we can, we'll share with you where the books are going to be distributed to. So we've got nominations from a previous distribution that we did, so we'll probably have that and then probably circulate that out and ask your head of service to confirm where they should be going this time round. So when we sent out some Ukrainian dual language books, we had nominations from heads of service about where to send them, and we'll probably use that same list again. But we'll be in touch sort of closer to the time to let you know about a bit more about that. But I'm conscious of time, and everyone's running off to man counters, or person counters, I should say, and have other meetings. So I just want to say a big thanks to all of you from the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust and from Raj and Katie as well for coming today. And thanks for everyone for all the questions as well in the chat. It's been really helpful to have your questions, to know what kind of information we need to share back with you. So, and also thanks to Emma for sharing all the slides and keeping everything moving on. So thank you all, and shall we just, Andy, just stay on the screen afterwards and just have a quick catch up? So
yeah, thank you. I think someone wanted to ask a question as well, so do stay
oh
on.
yeah, we can just answer that, can't we? So
Thanks everyone.
thank you.
Thank you.